Why people are not having kids. In 2025, the question isn't whether birth rates are falling, it's why. In the UK, the fertility rate now sits around 1.45, far below the replacement level of 2.1. According to the UK Office for National Statistics, this marks a significant decline from previous decades. In the US, nearly half of adults under 50 say they're unlikely to have kids. A 2021 Pew Research Center study found that 44% of non-parents aged 18 to 49 said it's not too likely or not at all likely that they will have children someday. Of those, 60% just don't want children. The rest say they either can't afford it or the world feels too unstable to bring kids into. This isn't just a Western phenomenon. Countries across Europe, Asia, and even parts of Africa are seeing plummeting fertility rates. The question is no longer whether this is happening. It clearly is. The question now is why? And what does it mean for our future? Let's start with the obvious: money. In 1980, rent in the US typically took up about 15% of the average American's income. Today, it's closer to 30%, according to data from the US Bureau of Labor Statistics. Back then, the median home price was about 3 times the median household income. Now, it's nearly 6 to 7 times. And if you're wondering what's more expensive, raising a child or buying a home, the answer is they're basically the same. According to a USDA report, raising a child to age 18 costs over $300,000. Meanwhile, the median US home price is also hovering around $390,000 per recent data from Redfin and Zillow. So it makes sense that people are asking, one child or one home? Because for many Americans, you simply can't afford both. The UK is in the same boat. In 1980, rent in the UK might have taken up about 10% of your income. Now, it's closer to 30%. In 1980, house prices were roughly 4 times the average income. Today, they're about 8 times, based on Nationwide Building Society data. Since 1997, the UK state pension has risen by 50% in real terms, according to the Institute for Fiscal Studies. Child benefits, they've fallen, and with the benefits cap on families with more than 2 children, the message is clear. Governments are more willing to fund retirement than reproduction. And it's not just the UK. Across the OECD, family support has stagnated while the cost of living soars, particularly in housing, education, and childcare. Which brings us to the next question. If economics doesn't tell the whole story, what else is influencing this trend? If the cost of living were the only reason people are having fewer children, then countries with lower housing costs would have higher birth rates. But they don't. Italy and Poland, for example, have relatively affordable housing, yet their fertility rates are 1.2 and 1.3 respectively, according to Eurostat. Norway and Germany are more expensive, but their fertility rates are slightly higher, both hovering around 1.5. Zoom out even further. 40 years ago, India had a fertility rate of 5.0. Now it's 2.0. According to the United Nations Population Division. And this is during a period where India's standard of living has improved dramatically. So clearly, economic conditions alone don't explain what's going on. That leads us to look at how culture and evolving roles are shaping reproductive choices. Some point to women's increased education and career aspirations. There's a weak correlation: more education, fewer children. But the story isn't that simple. Take Tunisia and Turkey. Female workforce participation is still below 35%, based on data from the International Labour Organization, yet their fertility rates have also dropped below replacement level. Even in many Islamic nations, Oman, Kuwait, Iran, Algeria, fertility has collapsed. In fact, World Bank data shows 5 of the 10 countries with the steepest fertility declines over the past 30 years are predominantly Muslim-majority nations. So it's not just about women choosing work over motherhood. These cultural shifts intersect with another major force, technology, and how it's changed how we relate to each other. Something else changed around 2016. Not the economy, not public policy, but tech. That's when Instagram, TikTok, and algorithmic content really took over. More time online, less time offline, more time in echo chambers, less time meeting new people. Research from the Max Planck Institute and other academic sources has found a statistical link between increased screen time and lower birth rates, particularly amongst the 18 to 34 age group. And it makes sense. If people are anxious, isolated, and not dating, they're not forming families. According to Pew Research, over 50% of US adults aged 18 to 34 are not in a relationship. That's a huge shift. And to that, the fact that marriage is no longer seen as a social requirement. There was a time, not long ago, when getting married and having children was the default path for many adults. In the 1960s, being single into your 30s was considered unusual, even stigmatized. People were expected to marry young, settle down, and start a family. It wasn't just a personal choice, it was a cultural expectation, reinforced by religion, tradition, media, and even workplace norms. To put that in perspective, the average age of first marriage in the 1960s was remarkably young. In the United States, the average woman married at age 20 and the average man at 22. In the UK, the numbers were similar, women around 22, men around 24. Fast forward to 2024, and those figures have shifted dramatically. The average age of first marriage in the UK is now around 32 for women and 34 for men, according to the Office for National Statistics. In the US, it's about 30 for women and 32 for men, per US census data. That's more than a 10-year jump in just over half a century. Today, being single in your 30s or even 40s is not only accepted, it's often celebrated. Living your best life, focusing on yourself, prioritizing your career or mental health, these are now seen as legitimate and even admirable alternatives to family life. This cultural transformation doesn't just reflect changing values, it actively shapes behavior. When society stops expecting marriage and parenthood, fewer people pursue them. And that has profound consequences for birth rates, family structures, and the future of entire nations. This digital rewire may be quietly rewriting our demographics. To understand the bigger picture, we also need to examine how men and women are increasingly moving in different directions. We're also seeing something new: a gender divergence. Data from the Financial Times and US-based studies show that young men are leaning right politically, while young women lean left. They're also spending time differently. Men are on video games, women are on social media more. The result? Men and women are spending less time in the same physical and digital spaces, and they're increasingly shaped by different cultural influences. With fewer shared interests, worldviews, and experiences, it becomes harder to connect, let alone build lasting relationships. And that ultimately leads to fewer couples forming in the first place. In addition to economic pressures, many people are choosing to delay or forego parenthood because of deep concerns about the state of the world. Climate change tops the list for many younger adults who worry about bringing a child into a world facing rising temperatures, more frequent natural disasters, and environmental degradation. For some, the future feels uncertain, not just financially, but existentially. Why raise a child in a world where wildfires, floods, and food insecurity could become the norm? Political instability is another major factor. In an era defined by polarized governments, increasing authoritarianism, and global conflict, many feel that the world is too volatile to provide a stable environment for a child. War in Ukraine, tensions in the Middle East, growing fears of nuclear conflict, and even the rise of domestic unrest in democratic countries all contribute to a collective anxiety about the future. Parenthood, once considered a hopeful act, now feels risky for some. In the West, particularly in countries like the United States, the UK and Canada, millennials and Generation Z are the first generation that may not be better off than their parents. For instance, many of their parents were able to buy a home in their 20s or early 30s. Today, skyrocketing housing prices and stagnant wages have made home ownership feel increasingly out of reach. That lack of long-term stability makes it even harder for young people to envision raising a family. There's also the growing fear that children will inherit an unfixable world. From pandemics to AI job displacement, people are questioning whether the next generation will actually have it better. The old assumption that life would improve over time is no longer a guarantee. This isn't just pessimism, it's a shift in worldview. While past generations saw parenthood as part of building a better future, many today see it as adding another vulnerable life to a broken system. In this mindset, choosing not to have children isn't selfish, it's seen as responsible. People around the world are having fewer children, and it's quickly becoming one of the biggest challenges facing governments today. From the UK to Japan, fertility rates have dropped well below the replacement level of 2.1, raising concerns about aging populations, shrinking workforces, and unsustainable pension systems. South Korea is a warning. Seoul's fertility rate is 0.55, the lowest in the world. Young women there say housing is too expensive, pressure is too high, and society is too competitive. One woman told the LA Times she simply doesn't think Korea is a place where a child can be happy. And she might be right. Korea's economic growth comes at a huge social cost. The work culture is intense, education is brutal, and family support is limited. The numbers speak for themselves. Economic success has come at the expense of the next generation. Governments around the world now recognize that falling birth rates are not just a demographic issue, they're a national crisis. An aging population and shrinking workforce threaten everything from economic growth to pension sustainability. That's why countries are starting to act. In Japan, the government is offering cash incentives for each child and subsidizing fertility treatments. Hungary has introduced generous tax breaks for mothers, including lifetime income tax exemption for women with 4 or more children. In France, families receive monthly child benefits and subsidized childcare, while Singapore is investing in parental leave and baby bonuses. Even China, after decades of the one-child policy, is now encouraging larger families through housing and education subsidies. While no single solution has reversed the trend, the urgency is clear. Governments know the future is at stake, and they're trying, some more aggressively than others, to make parenthood more possible, affordable, and appealing.